In this video, we're going to be taking a look at a really interesting function here inside InkStitch. Let's go ahead and import an image that we're going to be using for this example. Go ahead and accept our defaults. And so here's the image. And what we want to do is we want to recreate this Hello Kitty text. And we're going to show you one way that you can do that quite easily if you just have a little bit of know-how here inside InkScape and then converting it for InkStitch. So the first thing I think I want to do is go ahead on layer 1 here. Let's go ahead and just lock that. That's my image layer. And let's go ahead and lower the opacity. So we click on that little square and we'll lower our opacity down to about 50% or so. And then let's go ahead and create a new layer. And we'll just click add. We'll just leave it layer 2 for the time being. So let me just kind of first of all show you a generic example, and then we'll get into some more specifics. So the function that we're going to be using can be found under Extensions, InkStitch, and if you come down here to Tool Satin, it's this last option. It's called Zigzag to Satin. Now we could convert this, we could do a trace bitmap and convert this to vector and do all of that, but I think we'll just go right into going ahead and digitizing this design. So let me show you how simple this function is. And the more you get to work with it, I think you'll find that it's pretty easy to use, and you'll kind of figure out exactly what you need to do to make it work the best way possible. But what we're going to do is grab our pen tool. So we're going to try and always use our keyboard shortcuts. So B for boy goes our pen tool. And all we're going to do is we're going to create a zigzag. So we're just going to click right here on the border and then click here. And then we'll come down and click here and here and here and here. And here we kind of have to guess, right? Because we don't have a clear boundary here. But where we have a clear boundary, we can go ahead and use it. Now the nice thing about this function is literally anybody could do that, right? All we're doing is clicking back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and then when we're finished, we're just right-clicking, and that creates a path, okay? So it's a zigzag path. So if we come up here to Extensions and come down here to InkStitch and choose Tool Satin and choose the Zigzag to Satin, and we'll just go ahead and you see we do have smoothing applied and we do have the line pattern of zigzag. We're not going to choose this option to add or reduce rungs. We're just going to go ahead and hit apply. And then you'll see what InkStitch gives us. So if we know anything about satin, we know that we need 2 rails. And so what it did is it took that zigzags that we just created and it created 2 paths, which are rails. Now from here, if we want to fine-tune this, so for example right here, I might want to fine-tune that a little bit. See? And sometimes we will have nodes that we don't actually need. So we'll go ahead and delete those nodes. And we'll just take a look at what this creates. So you can already see that looks a little bit better. So let's just take a look at what this created for us. So if we go into Extensions and we choose InkStitch, and then we go ahead and choose params, I could go into Simulator because this has already been converted into a satin. So you can see we get a series of satin stitches. And these don't look terrible. Now you can see here the stitch angle is a little bit wonky here. It really should be kind of more straightened out right there. But, that's not a terrible result. So that's pretty good. Now, this obviously doesn't match up with our artwork because we have this whole section that we're missing. And this is what I want to show you how to fix that. Okay, so we don't need this node here. So you'll get a kind of feel for what nodes you actually need to represent the shape. Like we've got all these notes along here. I definitely don't need that one, and I definitely don't need those two. Um, and I could probably honestly get away. Let's just see once if I could get away with getting rid of this one even. And you could see that the path changed very little, and we just have the start and end point. And if I were to delete this one, you could see the path changed very little, and we just have the start and end point. So what we're going to do here, though, is we're going to select both of these nodes, and we're going to choose this option right here, which is going to create a segment for us between the two selected nodes. And that's where I'm going to come in here, use these control handles to fill in that last little bit of shape. Now, if you don't see control handles, sometimes it is going to be more convenient to not see those control handles. There's a little icon up here that will toggle those on and off. So if you don't see control handles, that's why. You probably at some point accidentally toggled that off, okay? So there you go. So now that's our shape. But now, because we added this little cap, we no longer have satin rails, okay? Because we have one path and we need two. So what I do is I just come here right to the peak, okay? Double click. We're going to add a node, and then we're going to choose this option to break apart. Now we have two paths. We have this one and we have this one, okay? So let's go ahead and just take a look at what we have now. We'll just use params to do this. So you can see we have our satin column again. And you can see we have a nice rounded top. And honestly, these stitch angles aren't terrible. I would like to see these a little bit more straight at this point. So we'll go ahead and choose apply and quit. But that's not a bad start. Now, how do we control stitch angles in satin stitches? Well, you definitely can do it through adding rungs, and that is the most traditional way, is to add rungs. But for our case, we're not going to add rungs. I'm a big proponent of not using rungs when it comes to satin stitches. So instead, we're going to use nodes. So if we want to control a stitch angle, we just add a node here, add a node here, add a node here, and add a node here. Okay, so now that's going to be our stitch angle. Okay, and if we wanted to, we could put one in the middle and put one here, and then it would kind of ease into it. So let's see now if in fact that looks different. So we'll go to params. So you can see how it levels out much quicker. And yes, that's what I wanted. I wanted that. So that's how we can go about really controlling. And if you say, well, if we wanted to, we could come over here and then delete this one. You might want to do that, or you can come down here and put it down there. So if you want to fiddle with your stitch angles, that's the way to do it. So the main key component that you have to remember when we're talking about using nodes for stitch angles is they have to match up. So here we have a pair right at our endpoint, and here we have a pair, and here we have a pair, and here we have a pair, and here we have a pair. And of course, we have a pair sitting right on top of one another as well. Okay, so that's just kind of something we got to keep in mind as we're doing this. Now, as we go through and add more satin columns, you'll see it can get more and more and more complex. Okay, so anytime that we have a rounded end, we just kind of ignore that for right now. So I'm going to go into my pen tool. I just hit the B key on my keyboard, and away I go. So I just come here and here and here, and you kind of get a feel for how far you can take it, to see how many points that you really need to find, especially around this tight curve. I want to show you what I'm about to do here, because I think this will be kind of interesting for you. So when you're going around a curve, probably more is better. You do have to go side to side. Okay, so that's something to kind of keep in mind. But what's interesting about this is we're going over the top of something that we already drew. Okay, so that is kind of the mess that we created. But now when I come into extensions and I come into InkStitch and I come down here to Tool Satin, Zigzag to Satin, we'll just go ahead and hit apply, accept all those defaults. And you can see, look at there, it did a really good job of creating our satin. Now, if you want to just look at it just the way it is, let's go ahead and do that in params. I just think it's a cool effect. It's going to come around, come back through, and it's going to go right over the top. Okay, now you could see that this satin is, it's a little bumpy, it's a little wavy, it's not totally perfect. Also, these stitch angles may not be exactly what we want, but for that raw first look, that's really not too bad of a job just by making those clicks. Okay, now if we double click on this, you could see why we have these kind of wiggly, squiggly results that we have. Everywhere that we clicked, we went zig, 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 it created a node, okay? So, but just like we showed you previously with this, we don't really need all those nodes in order to represent the shape that we're trying to get. Now you see what we did there? We deleted a bunch of nodes because I felt like we didn't need them, but look what we created for ourselves. So I'm just going to go ahead and move that one a little bit more in position. So anytime we have something like this, it's probably just as easy for us to click those two nodes where the squiggly is and click on that. Go ahead and straighten that out for us. So you see how we did that? Really, really easy. So this node here, we could probably move down here. And then, yes, we can go ahead and delete those for sure. This one, I think is, yeah. So that one is part of that line. So we could definitely probably get rid of all of those because we don't really need them. And so I feel like as far as cleaning up the design, that's probably the easiest way to do it. Now, like I say, you'll kind of get a feel for, hey, do I really need all these nodes? I do need my transformation handles. There we go. And then we can kind of just tighten it up there. So like, for example, we don't need that one to represent. We probably don't need that one. Or when it changes kind of significantly like that, okay, we'll leave that one, but then we don't need this one. Okay, so sometimes it's just like one or the other. You can, okay, it didn't change significantly, and for sure we don't need that. And sometimes it is a little bit hard sometimes to know what, especially when we're going over the top of it, like what node is on what. But so now you can really see that this is much smoother than what we started with, right? So then we'll go ahead and do our end cap thing over here. So we'll select this one, hold our shift key down and select this one. We'll go ahead and add our end cap. Okay, and we'll use our transformation handles. Make that nice and rounded. We'll double click to add a node. We'll break it right here, this icon right here, break. Okay, so now it's broken there. And then we'll go ahead and add our end cap down here too. So we'll go ahead and right here, and then same thing, we'll pull it out and we'll use our transformation handles. We'll double click right there at the tip, added a node, and we'll break it. So now we have two rails again. But if I come up here and look at it in params, we're going to see that we have a much better result as far as the satin stitch result. You can see it's just a lot more uniform and clean. But we have a terrible result there with our stitch angles. But other than that, this is a much cleaner, nicer looking result. So now that we've got that going for us, then all we need to do is, we know where the problem is we got to go through and add a couple of nodes. So, for example, this, see, that is part of the vertical there, as is this one, okay? So then that's going to make the stitch angle, if we leave that where it's at, that's going to make the stitch angle go this direction, but we really probably don't want that. Just move that up just a touch, and so now that becomes the stitch angle. And we'll just go ahead and select this one and then hit the delete key on our keyboard to get rid of it. So now we just want to add a couple more. So we'll add one there. So this guy here, we can leave him and we'll just add a mate to him. This guy here, we can leave him, but we're going to add a mate to him directly across, right? This guy here, we'll come over here and figure out exactly how we want that, but then this guy here needs a mate. Okay, then this guy here can use a mate. Okay, and remember this one is part of the vertical, so we'll go ahead and maybe add one more, but we always need to add a mate. And of course this mates up with that, and then that's the end. So just to kind of recap, we got the two endpoints meeting at the top, and then there's a mate, and then we're coming down, there's a mate, 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 and there's a mate. So now when we go into params, we should have nice perfect results when it comes to our satin stitch there. So we'll see what we get. Come around the bend there. And yes, you can see we controlled that much better. Now, this I think could be smoothed out a little bit. I think that could be possibly smoothed out a little bit. That's being super nitpicky, but you could see what's happening here. So if I back that off just a little bit, and I'll delete that one, and then I'll do the same thing over here. I'll just pull that one back just a little bit, and then delete that one, and then let's try that. Like I said, that's being super nitpicky, but I just want to show you that you can really control your stitch angles that way. So we'll look at it one more time. Coming around the bend there. And so you can see it's just a little bit smoother transition. And I like that, just that small little change. And that's, like I said, that's being super nitpicky. Okay, so you can see it's pretty straightforward, right? Now, on this, we might do something completely different. So on this, rather than do the zigzag, we could just create a rail, right? We'll create a rail. Then we will take those two and combine them, because they do have to be combined in order to be turned into a satin. So Control K is our keyboard shortcut. We could come up here to Path and combine, but you see that keyboard shortcut right there, Control K. Now, just like before, in order to get these end caps, we're just going to double click, select both of those nodes, and we're going to add that segment, and then we can click and drag. We can use our control handles to fine tune. We can double click to add a node in the middle, and then we break it. And then we're going to do the same thing on this side. So we select that node, shift select this one, and it's just kind of very repetitive editing. So we're going to go ahead and move that up, use our control handles. There you go. Double click right there at the tip. We'll go ahead and break it apart. Now we have two satin rails. Now, if we look at this, you see this node is at an angle. Well, we don't want that. We want that node basically right across from there. So now we're going to delete this one, and we shouldn't see our path change too dramatically. Same thing here, directly across, and delete that one. Okay, so now it's going to use those as our stitch angles. So if we look at that, go to params here. Now this one, it's not actually going to be a satin column because we didn't use the convert satin column. So we're just going to have to turn off running stitch, and then it will default to a satin column. But you can see now we have a nice stitch result there. Nice satin column all the way to the peak there. We'll choose apply and quit, and there you go. So now we can go back to using our zigzag. So we'll come in here and look, I'm going to come way down here and just see how that differs. And that's just something you'll have to play with a little bit to get a feel for what it actually does or doesn't do. Okay, so you see that's kind of a weird one there. So let's come up here to extensions, InkStitch, and then Tool Satin is Zigzag to Satin. We'll go ahead and choose apply. And you can see it more or less did a very good job. And that's because that section where I made that big leap, that big jump, that was more or less straight. Okay, so we don't have to like zigzag, 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 zigzag. So, you know, so all that comes with time. But you can see it did a pretty good job. Now, obviously, we don't need all these nodes, so we'll select those. We'll shift select all of those. And like I say, you'll get a feel for what we actually need or what we don't need. But you see, we can get rid of all those. We could definitely get rid of all of those. We don't need those because we could control that curve just with a couple of nodes. And there you go. That's obviously much, much smoother now. This we can move out just a little bit. I see that. We're going to click on that node right there. And let's just move that curve out just a little bit. So same thing as we had done previously, right? We're going to select those two. We're going to go ahead and add a segment. Move those up. Use our control handles. Double click in the middle. Break that node. And now we have a nice satin column. Now we have stitch angles here. Okay. Now you can see this one's up a little bit over that one. So I might just double click to add a node and then come up here and delete that one. Shouldn't change our path, so now it's kind of more directly across. Those are directly across, but we probably should put some stitch angles here just to control that a little bit better. Same thing here, add a couple, and let's just go ahead. I don't know if we necessarily need it, but we'll add one there. Okay, just to kind of transition that. Okay, so let's go ahead and try that. So InkStitch params. So there we go. Really, really nice result there. So perfect. So we'll go ahead and hit apply and quit, and then we will go ahead and copy that over. So first things first, I forgot to duplicate it, but then we can copy it over. Okay. Now for our little circle top here, we're going to go ahead and use our ellipse tool. Go ahead and draw an ellipse. Okay. So then we're going to go to path and we choose object to path. But just like before, we have to think about, well, how do we want our satin to stitch? Do we want it horizontally or do we want it vertically? And I want my satin stitch for this top of my eye to go horizontally. So to achieve that, we're going to double click on our new object here, object to path. So we have a new path. We're going to click on this, shift click on this, and we're going to break it apart. And then we're going to go ahead and specify params. Now normally I wouldn't keep going into params bit by bit by bit, but I'm just doing that just to illustrate you know, the process over and over and over again, so you kind of understand. But because we broke it at the top, you could see our satin stitches are going horizontally. Had we broke it over here on the sides, then we would have our two rails and our satin stitch would be going vertically. Okay, so that's why that's happening like that. Okay, so again, we're going to go ahead and do our eye. So we'll switch over to our pen tool. We're not going to go right to the cap here. We're just going to come just to the side of the cap. And we're going to kind of go to the extreme, because I just want to push it to its limits to see when she's going to break. So you can see here what our zigzag, we got a big hole here on purpose, because I want to see what kind of result we get when we do something crazy like that. So let's go up here to InkStitch and tool Satin, zigzag to Satin, and see if the software will fill that in for us. So let's do that again. I don't know what I did there, but we'll go to tool Satin, zigzag to Satin, and choose apply. Whoa. So you could clearly see that it needed more information than we give it. So let's just go ahead and recreate it. So, okay, so we can't be too crazy with it, but we could be pretty crazy with it. So just gave it a few more nodes here this time around, and I'm confident we'll have excellent results, but I just wanted to show you there it does have its limitations, obviously. So now we'll go back to tool Satin and we'll choose zigzag here and we'll choose apply, but we'll get a fairly decent result this time. Close. Yes. Okay, so we did get a fairly decent result. Now we do have a little bit of squiggliness, and then but because we have more points, we have a lot more points, right? So we have to think about, well, what do we need, what don't we need? Well, we don't need that, we don't need that, and we don't need that. We have this, and we could reposition this. We have some control handles we can reposition, and that part of the editing will kind of come second nature to you the more you play with it. So I'm confident about that. So we'll go ahead and delete that, and you can already see that that is a much better result now. Go ahead and double click on that. We'll use our transformation handle to fix that up a little bit. We'll select this one, shift select this one, and shift select this one. We will have to add a segment to come in and add our cap. Use our transformation handle there, our transformation handle here. And you could see one thing to kind of point out about these caps when you're using your transformation handles. You notice how that transformation handle is more or less straight up and down, more or less straight up and down. So then that means you have a nice rounded cap. Okay, like if it was out like this, or if it was in like that, you could see it wouldn't be. But if it's kind of straight in line, then you know you got it right. So we'll go ahead and double click, and we'll go ahead and break that path. We do now have a nice satin. We almost have a nice satin, because what did we forget? We forgot to add our stitch angles, right? So we've got a pair there. We've got a pair here now. So now we're gonna tell it to turn. I don't know if I want to do that. Let's go ahead and just go straight across. Adding a node. And then we've got this one. Now we'll go ahead and start turning. And now we'll go ahead and start turning. And then we'll start easing into that turn here. So now we should have a nice satin stitch. We got all of our nodes paired up. So our angles should be nice and controlled. And yes, see there, our stitch angles are all in line there, looking good. Okay. So now for the kitty here, what the way I see it is this is going to stitch, and then this, and then this will be kind of on top. I really don't know. That's another piece of the puzzle, really. The stitch order of how all this would actually stitch out. Well, I'll show you how to fix that here in a second. But anyhow, let's go ahead and get the artwork portion done. Now again, because this is more or less straight, we can do something just like that. I think we could do that. So when we have just a straight piece, we'll give it a couple of definitions, and let's just see once. I think that will actually work though. So tool satin, zigzag to satin. The only way to do it is to try it, right? So yes, so you can see that take care of it, and actually it's better to do it that way, because then we don't have so many points that we're messing with, right? We basically just have 2 points on each end. So we'll go ahead and add that segment, and that's going to add our cap. And remember, these we're just basically going to bring straight up. This one we're going to be straight up, and now you can see we have a nice rounded cap when we do that. So we'll go ahead and break that. Same thing down here. We're going to click here, shift click here. We'll add that segment, pull it out, and then again we'll just bring this kind of straight in line with that one and do the same thing here. Now this cap here, we'll just bring these nodes back a little bit here because we were a little bit close to the end when we did that. So now you can see we have a nice rounded cap. Double click to add a node. We'll break it right there. And so now we automatically, this one is not quite across from that one. So we'll go ahead and maybe add a new node so it's more or less straight across. That one is more or less straight across. So now you'll see that we'll have nice, perfect stitch results. You can see our satin column, our stitch angles and everything are exactly the way we would want them. See? Very, very easy. So again, we'll grab our pen tool, we'll click here, go straight across, come down here, come down here. That's all the information we need to give it. We'll come down here to Tool Satin, Zigzag to Satin, choose Apply. There's our rails. So now you can see we were off a little bit here because, you know, we were just totally guessing. So we could bring that in a little bit, and we could bring this up a little bit. I do want it to underlap just a pinch, so that's why I did it the way I did it. And then we'll go ahead and add that segment. We'll add our cap. Again, we'll bring our transformation handle straight out. Bring our transformation straight out. We've got a nice rounded top. Double click to add a node. Break that node. And now we have nice, perfect stitch results again. See? Stitch angles look good. So we'll go ahead and choose Apply and Quit. And then we'll just kind of do this last section. Now this one, remember, we do have to kind of give it some more definition. So we're going to grab our pen tool. We definitely need to give it some more definition because we got a lot more curves going on. So we'll give it some more definition. I'll tell you what we're going to do. Let me, okay. Let me do it to you both two different ways, okay? So let me go back in here and we'll start back at what we were doing just a second ago. So we are going to use the zigzag to satin, but I do want to show you one other thing that you really should consider. So let's go ahead and do the zigzag to satin so you can see how close my zigzags are, because we have you know, quite a bit of curved action going here. So there you go. So that will give us a decent result. So we'll go ahead and choose InkStitch Tool Satin, the zigzag to satin, and then we'll go ahead and choose Apply. And so you can see it gives us reasonably good results, and just like you've seen over and over and over again now, what don't we need? Well, I don't think we need that one. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll just delete a node and see, well, did it change dramatically? And if it did, can I fix it? Yes. So I'll go ahead and leave this one now, but then all of this is going to go. Okay? Because I feel like that's like all of this right here, all of that can go. All of that can go. I'm pretty confident there. We've got our control handles. We can control things. Ooh, I don't know. Let's see. Let's go ahead and get rid of this one. We definitely don't need that one. Okay, so that one's good. And then I'm just going to double click and add a node. And then that should give us the extra control we need to kind of perfect that curve. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Now, what we don't have is we don't have our stitch angles under control. So let's double click so you can see that has a pair. This needs a pair. And then this guy needs a mate. This one needs a mate. And this one needs a mate. And of course we got one there. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. InkStitch params. And I'm pretty happy with those stitch angles. I'm not upset about those. So we'll go ahead and click apply there. Yeah, I'm pretty satisfied with those. Okay, so that is the zigzag to satin in a nutshell. Now, I do want to show you an alternate though. Okay, so you can see how many times we had to click back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Once your skill level kind of increases a little bit, you may not want to always use that. That is pretty cool, especially like where we were coming down and we're coming over the top of itself and things like that. But what if we wanted to just recreate this ourselves? So let me show you what we're going to do. We're going to grab our pen tool and we're going to click here. And I'm clicking basically everywhere I think there's a significant change in direction. So you see there? So I'm going to come over here, click, and click, and click, and click, and I'm going to come over here and click. Okay, now I'm going to switch over to my node tool, so just hit the N key on my keyboard, and just click and drag like so. Same thing here, we're going to grab that node, click on that path, and then we can okay, now just like before when we were doing our node editing, maybe we don't need that one. Maybe we can control it all right here. So I'll zoom in a little bit. We can just move in there. And then we do have our control handle, so we can control our curve there. You can see here it has like, it's not perfectly smooth. So sometimes what we could do is create a node, an extra node, and then we can delete it. And then we can kind of fine tune it a little bit, and then it will be smooth. Right here, this node's not smooth either. So we could select it and delete it, and then we can use our control handles to kind of perfect that path a little bit. And so that's more or less the same path that we had. So we'll go ahead and select them both and Control K to combine them, but we don't have our stitch angles. So we'll come in here and we'll add some stitch angles. We'll add a node there and there. This guy needs a mate. This one needs a mate. We'll add another one here. Define that stitch angle. This guy needs a mate. And this guy needs a mate. And then that one already has it. So now we'll come into InkStitch params. Now this is not a satin at this point, but we could turn off the running stitch and then it will automatically be converted into a satin. And so you can see that we more or less have the same result as what we had previously. So it's really up to you, depending on exactly where your skill level's at and so forth. Do you want to utilize it all, the zigzag to satin, or you want to kind of mix and match a little bit? Okay. Now you can see, like in this particular case, there's some overlap. There's some overlap. Here there's not barely any overlap. Here there's not much. Okay. Here there's not much overlap. So you can, but you can extend those rails if you want just a little bit more overlap. All right. So now the next thing I want to show you is how to kind of set the order. If you want this to stitch out in a certain way, then we could do it like this. So for example, I do want this to be a bottom element. So, and then I want this to stitch out on top, and then I want this to stitch out on top of that. And then I want this to stitch out. Well, probably this to stitch out, and then this, and then this, and then this, and then this is going to be on top of that, and then that's going to be on top of that, and then that's going to be on top of that. So now we can come up here to extensions, and we'll choose InkStitch, and we'll choose edit, and we're going to choose this restack objects in order of selection. Now I will be the first one to tell you that I myself am still struggling with pathing. So I'm going to go ahead and select this and show you what it looks like. So we are going to go down here to the stitch plan preview. So I'm going to show you what it looks like as far as what it ultimately is going to look like when it's stitched out. So visually, when this shows us, visually it's going to look good and it's going to look right. But the number of thread jumps and thread trims, we haven't even dealt with that particular issue. But let's go ahead and close this out. But in terms of how it's stitching out, you could see if we look real closely, it stitches out beautifully in terms of what's on top and what's on bottom. Everything is going to look really nice. But I can tell you, without even looking, that the way this stitches out is going to be riddled with thread jumps and riddled with thread trims that we probably aren't going to want. So this is kind of the first step in the puzzle. All right. Now there is one last little thing I did want to point out to you, as long as we're talking about this, because this is something that you may want to change. You know, it just kind of depends. Now in this particular example, I don't think it's going to matter, but if you were concerned about it, I'll show you how to fix it. And so, for example, so we have this piece that is going to be a satin stitch going all the way across, and then these vertical tees, right? These vertical tees, we're going to come over the top of this satin. Well, what if you didn't want that to happen? So we've already created this piece, but what if you didn't want, so where this top of the tee goes over that cross, we don't want anything underneath it. We just want one satin column, not a horizontal satin column and a vertical. Well, we already have our satin column made. So all we have to do, I'm just going to zoom in a little bit tight here. So all we have to do is just double click here, double click here, double click here, and double click here. And we're going to click here in the middle, and we're going to choose this option to delete. And that will delete okay, so this is deleting between two endpoints. My bad, I kind of forgot. So this is deleting between two endpoints. So what we have to do is we're going to break it. Okay, so then we selected this and this, and we're going to break it. Okay, now we should be able to click on that and delete that line in between. Nope, it doesn't want us to do that, but that's okay. So we'll do the same thing over here. We'll double click. I'll just show you this here in a second. And we're just going to create a node. And one other thing is I'm just going to come in here and see how I can kind of do a big selection of nodes there. And then we're going to break them. Okay. So now we can go ahead and take all of this and choose path, and we'll choose break apart. And what we'll get, those sections we can delete. These sections where we broke, we could delete. Now what we do need to do is these are now broken. We need to combine those. Okay, so each one of those sections, I'm just hitting Control K is all I'm doing. And so same thing here in the middle. We're going to hit Control K. But now we do need to go back in and specify params again. Because once you break it all apart, it'll lose its parameters. So we'll go ahead and select that. And we're not going to do running stitches. We are going to do satin columns. And of course, all of that will go ahead and stitch out correctly as far as that goes. So now we want this piece here, path, so we have path 8, and then we want 9, 10, 11. And then we're going to do 12, 13, 14, and 15. So we're just going to go ahead and choose InkStitch. We'll go ahead and restack again. So notice path 16 was directly above path 8. So all of that original stuff remains the same. So we have the lower part of the K, the upper part of the K, the vertical, and then we did the top of the I, the lower part of the I, and then we did that little piece, that little piece, that little piece, and then we come across the top, and the Y, right? Okay, so now all of that, so now we don't have satin column underneath the vertical part of our T's. Now, there is one other thing that we didn't really talk about yet, but I do want to show you because it is important. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole process of pathing this design. In other words, that it stitches out, you know, in a very logical, chronological way. But it is going to be important for you to know how to change direction. So in other words, when this first piece, this is our first piece, this is how we have it set up right now. So we have this first piece we're going to want to stitch from right to left. So let's see how it actually stitches. First of all, maybe it does, it's probably going to stitch left to right, but we'll see. So it does stitch from left to right. And the reason it stitches from left to right, because that is how we created the paths. We started at the left and worked our way to the right. So if we choose swap rails, then it should, typically, it should stitch from right to left, but in this case it didn't. So we'll undo that, and then we can choose reverse both rails this way. And now you can see, of course, it is in fact stitching in the opposite direction. And the reason that we want it to start on the right, because it's going to come up here, right? And then we want this to stitch from the top down. But we're going to need a little helper guy all the way to the top, and we're going to have to switch that to stroke style, some type of dashed line. Now, I know this is really getting into the weeds a little bit here, and I didn't want to go through all this, but I just want to give you a little taster that there is a little bit more work to getting this all to stitch out correctly. But let's see how this one stitches. So we're going to come from here, and we're going to go to params, and we want, again, we want this one to stitch from the top down. And we'll see how it stitches, and it's going from the bottom up, of course. So first, we always try to swap the rails. And yes, okay, see, that time it did it. That's all we needed to do there, okay? And then this, so when it finishes here, what we want to do then is we want to maybe go, let's see, we want this to come, so once it finishes this, we want it to come up here, okay? And yes, it's a dashed line, but we got to put this in the proper order. So this is going to stitch first, then this path is going to stitch, okay, and then this one's going to stitch, and then we need this one to stitch, and then finally we need that one to stitch, okay? I know that's probably a little bit confusing for you, but let's look at it in simulator mode, and then you'll kind of see. So let's go down here to simulator, and then you can kind of see how this is all going to path out. So we're stitching the lower part of our K, and then it's finishing, and then it's going to do a little running stitch up to the top of our K, and then it's going to start. And then when that finishes, it's going to do a little running stitch up to the top of our K there and finish out. And if we click on our little froggy here, there is one jump. You see that there? Where is that jump happening? That jump is happening right there, because that K, the lower part of the satin on the K is stopping right there, and then it has to jump to that running stitch. So that's no problem. So now that we know that, all we have to do is take this path and end it right there. That's all we need to do. And so now watch that. So now we'll go back and watch that again. We'll go to InkStitch here, and we'll check on Simulator again. And we'll add our frog back in, and you see there is no frog. And that's because we fixed where it joins. So now what it would do, just so we understand, so when it finishes this, there would be a thread trim, and then it would start in at the top of the eye and then kind of finish the design from there. Okay, so the rest of it, we could path it all out and make it all stitch as one. So in other words, so it's going to thread trim here, and then it's going to do this one, and then it's going to jump from here to here, do this one, right? And then what it would do, we would draw up a path all the way to here, and it would stitch this. Then we would have a path coming over here, it would stitch that, a path coming over here, it would stitch this, right? But probably what it would do is, so we would have a path that would come to the tip here. Okay, it would come all the way to the tip, and then it would stitch back to here, and then it would come all the way down a path and then start here. Okay, and then this one would have a path come up to here and stitch down to here. And then this one would have a path that would come up here and stitch down to here. And then this one, path come up here, and then it would finish off. Okay, so that's how all of that would work. Now, if I tell you what, extra credit, it's only going to take a second to do it. We're doing it. So this is going to jump from here to here, and we'll probably have to fix exactly where that jump is. But then we're going to come down here, and what we're going to do, we're going to grab our pen tool, and we are going to come up to here, come over to here. Okay, that's going to be our path. So let's find out where that's happening. So that's the top of the eye. So that is path 4. So path 33 needs to be above path 4. And then we're going to draw a line. When it completes this satin, it's going to come over here to this one. Okay. And then this piece is path 14. So then that's going to be above path 14. And then when it finishes over here, it's going to come all the way over here to the front of this one. And this one is path 16. So we'll go right there. It's going to be before path 16. And then when 16 finishes, we're going to come down here all the way up to the top of here, right? And then this one is path 6. So there's path 6, and it's going to come down and finish. And then we're going to pick up from here. Okay, and so this one is path 5. So that will be before path 5. And then path 5 is going to finish. And we're going to come up here to the tip of our Y here. And our Y is path 1. So we need this before path 1. So then that's going to stitch, and then we need this. A run from here to the top. And of course, this is path 2. So there we go. Now, the only other thing that we have to make sure of is that all of this is, that these are starting at the top. And like this one is starting and going all the way over to this one. So let's just look at all these. We'll look at these 3. These are the next 3 that are kind of a concern. So let's go into InkStitch params. And see how it's stitching. So yes, it is stitching from left to right. So that is perfect, except for that last piece. Okay, that last piece, we need it to stitch in the opposite direction. So let's go back into params with just that one piece selected, because it needs to come from the outside and come back in. So we just need to swap the rails, apply and quit, takes care of that. Let's double check this piece. And well, actually, let's check this piece too, because it needs to end at the bottom. So let's go into params. And it's starting from the top, so we're going to swap. And then it'll end at the bottom, so it'll have our proper jump. You'll see that here in just a second. Let's verify this one. This one needs to go from top to bottom. And it does not. So we will swap the rails on that one. And now it does. Perfect. And this one needs to go top to bottom, as does this one. So we'll look at both of them. We copied one from the other, so both of those should have the same parameters. Didn't look like we grabbed them, but that's okay. So we're going to go ahead and swap that rail. Make that come from top to bottom. Excellent. And then this one I didn't have selected accidentally, so we'll go ahead and put it. We'll swap those rails on that one, because we need it to come from top to bottom. Apply and quit. And then this one needs to come from top to bottom, which I believe it does already. But we'll double check it. No, it does not either. So we do need that to come from top to bottom. And then finally, our last piece, we need it to come from top to bottom. I watch a lot of InkStitch videos and when I was learning, and they would show you little bits and pieces, but no one ever talked about pathing. And so I've talked to some other people who are like legit InkStitch designers, and they all kind of told me the same thing, that yes, they do actually spend quite a bit of time pathing a design. Like it takes a little bit. So now let's go ahead and just watch the whole thing and see how many thread trims and what have you we got in the word kitty here. So we should just have the one. So we'll go ahead and turn on our frogs. And okay, so you can see we have some unexpected things happening. So I did expect this. Okay, I did expect that one jump to the top of our eye, and we expected that little jump, but the rest of it we didn't expect. So the rest of it, we probably have something with our running stitch. So let's look at that. We have something coming up with our running stitch. So this is path 8, and then the running stitch should be next, and it's not. It was in the wrong position. Okay, so let's look at that now. Now let's take a look. That might have been enough to fix it, but now we may have some other issues too. But let's take a look at it. So let's go back, turn our frog on. Yeah, we definitely still have some issues because we shouldn't have all those jumps. So, okay, so the first two, yes. The first two I understand. But then we have a running stitch coming up to there. Okay, and we have a running stitch coming across there, and we shouldn't. All right, so because we have this guy right here. So this stitches, which is 4, and then this should stitch next, and then next should be that one. So this is path 24, yes, and then this is path 14, yes, and then this is path 25, yes, and then this is path 16, yes, and then this is path 26, perfect, and that's path 6, yes, and then we should have this 27, path 5, okay, I think we have it now. So let's go back and double check. There could be potentially one more thing that's causing an issue, but we'll take a look at that here momentarily. Let's go turn our frogs back on. No, we still have all those frogs. I don't want all those frogs. But I'll explain why. So the first two, yes, we know we have those. But then the next one here, why is there a jump right there? There should not be a jump right there. But okay. Okay, so our horizontal, our connecting line is starting up here, but it's ending down here. So there's a little bit of a jump right there. Okay, so that needs to go down. And then the next jump is the same thing. It's finishing at the bottom and it's jumping up to that horizontal line. So, and then same thing here. See how this one is jumping down to the bottom. So those are some things we can fix right there. So this connecting line needs to happen right there. Then this one needs to happen right there, but then this one needs to happen, I believe, up there. Okay, so now let's take a look at it. Devil's in the details, folks. So let's go back in there and see what's happening there. Let's turn on our frogs. Hey, we're getting there. We're getting there. we don't have as many froggies. So then down here, what's happening right here, there's a jump happening. And that jump is happening because our connector line is in the middle and our connector line should be up there. So that's okay. We could fix that. And then the same thing is happening here. It's in the middle and it should be up top. So let's go ahead and so I think it's in the middle and it should be up top. I think it should be up on top on both of them. I think that's what we decided. So there's that one. And there's that one. And we could delete that one. I think that's how it was. So let's go ahead and look at it again. Simulator. Okay, Mr. Frog. No, Mr. Frog's still there. We don't like that. Why is it still there? That line going up to the top. To forward one stitch, you can just hit the plus key on your keyboard. So you can see that. Okay, so that's not registering as a jump. Where is our next jump? Okay, so our next jump is over here. We never changed this. So I'm just hitting the plus key on my keyboard. So that's where it's saying the jump is. Okay, so that's going to the top and it should be at the bottom. Okay, so the last one, it should be at the bottom, the connecting line, and then this one, what's happening here? I ain't figured this one out yet. Something's happening there. And I'm not sure that's where the jump is. No, I don't think that's where the jump is actually registering. I'm not quite sure exactly what's happening there. I'll tell you what we're gonna do. We're gonna fix it. I think let's look at this piece in params and see where it's ending. So sometimes that's easier to see in params than it is anywhere else. So we'll fast forward to the end here and see where this piece is ending. This piece is ending at the top, right there at the top. So our connector line, so that's path 5, so our connector line should also be right there at the top. And it is, but it's showing a jump there. And I'm not quite sure what the dealio is there. And then same thing here. Let's go ahead and look at this in params. And see where it ends. And it's ending at the bottom. Okay, so that one is ending. You can see that little cursor right there. So that one's ending at the bottom. Okay, so no problem there. So this one we just have in the wrong position. I'm not sure why that's given us a fuss. So let's take a look at it again and see what's going on there. See if it's still giving us the same result. So we can turn on our frogs, and yes, it still shows us a jump there. But the last jump is okay. So it's finishing the first T. The first T is what we have to look at for params, and I don't know if I looked at that. I thought I looked at the second T. I don't remember. So let's look at the first T in params. Yes, we did. We looked at the second T in params. It's the first T that's given us fits. All right, so let's look and see where it ends. It ends at the top. Okay, that's where our problem is. So the first one ends. The first T ends at the top. So therefore, our running stitch needs to connect at the top. Well, that's simple enough. My bad. I was looking at the wrong thing. So now, but I'm glad I did in a sense, because now you kind of know how to troubleshoot. So turn on our froggies, and yes, we have exactly what we want to have. Okay, so it's just going to have that one jump over to here, that one jump down, but then the rest of it will all stitch marvelously. So you click on our design info there. You can see, yep, so we got 2 jumps, which is fine. Those will be easy enough to clip when they're done. This satin stitch will kind of cover the jump stitch, but we can clip it right there. We can clip it down here. And of course, that little one we can clip. And that's it. So I hope you enjoyed this one. And I know this is a little bit long video, but there's some good information in there. Some information I didn't even intend to include. But that zigzag to satin, I think you're really going to like that once you play around with it a little bit. So again, I hope you learned a little something. Thanks for watching.